Please welcome Managing Director of Thayer Ventures, Chris Hemmeter, and Partner and Managing Director of Highgate Technology Ventures, Kurien Jacob, in conversation with Skift Senior Hospitality Editor, Sean O'Neill.
So the theme of our conference, as we talked about before, is that you need to have good data in order to have good AI. And we're going to get an investor perspective on this topic. Now we have two types of investors. We have the classic corporate corporate strategic that we have with HTV, with Kurien, and we have classic VC with Chris from Thayer. So thank you guys for being here. Appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Maybe, Kurien, if you could explain a little bit about HTV. People may not be quite as familiar with that. Highgate is the parent company, was one of the largest owners and operators of hotels in the US. But what is HTV?
Yeah, I would say strategic corporate, but I would say differentiated venture capital, I would say, or growth.
I take no offense.
Yes. So HTV or Highgate Tech Ventures, we're a strategic value additive firm. We do venture as well as growth equity investments, clearly in the travel and hospitality vertical, only actually in this space, not outside this. We've been around for around 8 years. We launched 2016, and invested in around 15 companies to date. Those companies have made around 20 bolt-on acquisitions over the time too, so we've got a couple of scaled up companies there too. And some of these portfolio companies sell across 70,000 hotels across 200 countries. So when you map out the various portfolio companies, so we're looking at our next cohort of potential travel tech and hospitality firms to hopefully in a few years they'll be scaled up too. So that's a brief there. But it was just born out of we have the Highgate, obviously the investment side, which is the PropCo business, Highgate, which is the Highgate Hotels operating side of the business, and HTV or Highgate Tech Ventures, which is focused on investing in travel and hospitality firms.
Very cool. And Chris at Thayer needs no introduction. Thayer Ventures has been around since 2009, has invested in a few dozen travel tech companies in that time.
Which means that I've made a lot more mistakes than KJ. That is for sure.
That means I've got a lot more to come.
Yeah,
So
you
that's
do, my
dangerous.
friend, you do.
Embracing failure. But one of the most recent successful exits that Thayer had was creating a SPAC and bringing Sonder to the public markets. So you're looking at one of the only people in the world who actually made a lot of money off of Sonder so far. Dad jokes all day.
Making jokes.
So Chris, maybe when we start for you, Thayer has a thematic view of like how we got into this mess. We're going to focus on hospitality tech for this conversation to keep things simple. So how did we get here?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's for those of us who have been around the industry a long time, there's a couple things that we've seen over the years. Obviously, this is one of the largest, most dynamic, interesting industries on the planet, and growing faster than global GDP, historically resistant to the adoption of technology. But that doesn't mean that it hasn't adopted technology. It's just that over the last 30 to 40 years, it's been very much a vendor-led, highly transactional approach to digitizing all processes. And so we sort of find ourselves now with this incredible technical debt and a real problem, because at the same time that our industry, and I'm talking mostly hospitality here, has been sort of playing catch up and just layering technology on top of itself, the traveler has changed. I mean, humans have changed, right? The way that we engage with every aspect of our lives. And we really feel that decoupling between the tech platform that drives the world of accommodations, principally hospitality, and the traveler, that decoupling has reached sort of a critical point, which is now driving, this sort of classic flipping of the iceberg, which makes it one of the best times to be an entrepreneur and an investor in the category.
So maybe just a brief little bit of color. So what is travelers decoupling from the traditional thing? What's an example of that?
Well, I mean, I think that you see more and more, especially Gen Z, if you really examine the way Gen Z is engaging with travel, inspiration planning, and even booking, a surprising percentage of their activity is being driven through social networks and connections. An incredibly insane percentage of their decisions about where to stay being driven by what they find on streaming content, which is really striking. And then a high degree, a new degree of expectation. You know, in the old days, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, a lot of hospitality operators would think of technology and automation as some sort of a impediment to the actual delivery of hospitality. Well, I think now, and we're seeing this, that the younger traveler doesn't view automation in the same way. And in a lot of cases, they don't want to stand at the front desk like a bank teller and wait for 10 minutes to be asked who they are again and given a room key. They want to make the choices about what they can engage with and when they can just sort of manage it on their own. And so, that interest has totally decoupled from what the tech stack can deliver.
Mm-hmm. So, Kurien, what's your view on the mess that we're in?
It's all your fault, Kurien. Basically, you guys screwed it up.
Guilty. I mean, I would. First of all, Chris, I don't know how many people in this generation probably do they even call or talk? Probably not, right? They're probably texting and everything is like they don't want to even probably talk to somebody on the phone, and you get pissed off. Why can't you just call me? Like 15 texts later, you'll see message. So you're right. So there's obviously that change. We are in this mess. There is no changing of that. It is impossible to rip out and replace everything we've got because we are in an industry where we have the fragmentation is built because of the owners, the managers, the brands, independent owners who come in and say, I can do a hotel, it's just too much. And there's been a cost-conscious approach to this for a long time, not looking at efficiency and not looking at productivity as well as revenue growth. It's always cost-driven stuff. Like we talk about mobile check-in and keyless entry. I mean, the doors, for God's sake, can't even fit a device to open it. So, and that's a CapEx expenditure. So trying to talk to these owners every time over time and say, hey, we need to invest in this. You are going to see this fragmentation. And I think what you're going to see is you're going to see different stages. The first one is going to be lipstick on a pig. So you're going to have that there. And on top of these squeaky tech stacks that you have, you're going to see companies actually, the smart companies are actually the ones who are going to say, this is really squeaky. All I need to do is put is a layer on top of it versus try to invent this. There are two reasons why that's successful. Because one, the rip and replace, you don't have to sell it to the hotel. You're sitting on top of it. And then once you sit on top of it, then you can start putting your tentacles right in slowly and slowly and slowly. And over time, get rid of that mess that you're in. So you are going to see that. If you see a tectonic shift, it's very difficult to happen here. That's our thesis too. So we're looking for these companies that can be platform plays that can try to make that shift happen using this methodology.
Cool. So
I just want to follow up. But don't you think the concept of RIP sort of is becoming less, less an issue as we move to cloud? I mean, the big RIP is from on-prem to cloud. But once you're in cloud, RIP doesn't become as big of a deal.
In the sense, if you look at the cloud, but then if you look at a hotel, right? A hotel has 15 different integrations with POS, different POSs, different payment systems, a unique golf resort here, some other systems. So you're looking at one core system, but each of them are connected to 200 different levels. Right. So if you have the core cloud, yes, you're seeing that movement. You're right. One of your companies like Muse or Cloudbeds, they're in the cloud and they're enabling through opening up the integration stack to create that ecosystem, that's for sure. But even then, the other point of rip and replacement is training.
Yeah, right.
We don't have, we have the issue with our field. The young people are not going to stay 15, 20, 30 years.
Right.
So they're going to come in, they're going to use this as a stepping stone to move on, and some people will continue to be in the industry. And you have that whole thing and say, hey, have you ever seen people's resume? I have Oracle Opera experience. I have Synexis experience. Who the hell cares, for God's sake? Why do you need that? In today's day and age, if you're saying you need experience, I mean, you're going to have AI tools to help you train to do this stuff. That's gone. And the problem that's the biggest issue where people feel like I have to train my entire staff. There's not too much pain. And that's probably the reason why we have that. So it's going to be a slow growth, but it'll happen.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So if anyone has audience questions for us, please put them in the app and we'll get to them. I think we've gotten a little bit to the data part of the conversation here. So I covered travel tech for about a decade, and now Justin at Skift is carrying on the torch. And I think the thing that I noticed, and we were talking a bit about this backstage before, is like there's a few pain points. It's like you need to have, it's not, the technology is there. The problem is often not adopting the technology or the quality of it. It is some of the human factors of, is your company creating incentives for your team to actually go ahead and adopt it out in the field. Some of the integration players that are legacy tech, you don't have, they're not incentivized to open up their systems and play nicely with each other, so that creates a stranglehold on progress. And so everyone is taking a cut out of the existing system, so they don't have an incentive to move forward on change. So a lot of it's a human factors problem rather than the travel industry doesn't understand what APIs are. Let's talk about the more optimistic in this latter half. Let's talk about AI. So what's your thesis about the opportunity for AI in the travel sector, Kurien?
Let's look at it. You know the McKinsey report, which you've featured a lot on your seminars. So I've seen a lot of it. What were they saying? $4.5 trillion by 2035. You take 10% of travel GDP, that's $430 billion. That's the math in 2035 or 2040.
Want to split it?
Yeah. So just mathematically, if you look at it, just extrapolating it to travel, that is the opportunity. Why is it even more important here today? Because this is I think AI, everybody's talking about the hype of Gen AI and all the rest of it. Think about the B2B level of automation that AI can have on industry is huge. I was just listening to Drew earlier this morning, and he said room assignment. Just imagine today, go to any hotel and check in. 90%, I would guarantee that 90% of cases, somebody has either sat through the night or during the day to figure out which room you're going to get. And I don't know what basis. Maybe they like your last name or your first name or some other weird stuff. But obviously, some people pay a higher rate. They might be given a different room. That entire room assignment can be automated. Why does it even exist? And then you're going to have somebody come across and do that, like point solution, and then you probably have a PMS by that. So if you look at it, the fragmentation, the amount of human capital that we have in this industry, the size of it, all of it, and the fragmentation is an opportunity itself. So that's what excites me personally. I think it's going to be the biggest movement for industry for sure. That's our belief.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the jury is still out on what it's going to mean for startups. I do think that every quality growth company is going to have some sort of a AI tool integrated into their value proposition, most likely, not always. But the concentration of talent and innovation at some of the big guys really worries me. I'm not really, is Google's work going to snuff out innovation, or is it going to enable innovation? I'm not really sure. And unlike sort of the move to mobile, which caught the big OTAs flat-footed and ill-prepared, they're way ahead with AI. So, it's not clear to me where the new innovations are going to come from at the startup level, but every company that's doing important work is figuring out how to integrate it in incredibly unique ways. And Canary Technologies and what they're doing with AI and their messaging and how they're incorporating that into their upgrade work is incredibly powerful and innovative. NLX, another one of our portfolio companies that's working in the airline space, and others, how they're using the tools to create super innovative products is compelling. But I don't know if AI, just for AI's sake, is going to be the big, home run in startup land. I'm not clear on that yet.
Yeah, I would actually add to Chris's point is I don't think we look for a company that is an AI company in travel. I don't think you have that approach, but you look at companies which can use the best of AI. Like for example, a simple thing is without the hype, Lighthouse, I think, which is a sponsor of this event too, they've created something called the AI summary report. It's the same goddamn report that the revenue manager sends every day to the general manager, and now it's run with AI. I think that's a phenomenal, small little thing. It's not sexy, but it gets sort of like 30 minutes of somebody's time, Those are the kind of things that you look for sure.
But the essence, right, and both of us spend our time doing this, is any startup, anybody who's trying to build a business has to be able to articulate a problem that they're solving, right? And that business case that they're solving, whether they're addressing it with AI or with other tools, it's really more about the elegance of the solution to the problem that's going to drive their success, as opposed to just bolting on, another story, which we've seen this movie before, right? I mean, we've seen everything was a move to mobile, then it was big data, then analytics, and Web3, everybody sort of updates their jargon, but it really does come down to the essence of the problem being solved and the elegance of the solution and the dynamics of competition.
So Chris, in your portfolio company, you have a few brands. So Muse, for example, is sort of more a foundational bet. So you sort of bet on this foundational play. You have Canary, which you mentioned, which is sort of like at the top of the tech. It's sort of like a layer for capturing the guest, and it may wedge down into the system. Then you have Hyperguest, which is sort of B2B2B, which is kind of an integration middleware. Where do you feel like the energy, given these different things, if AI gives most of its returns to having big tech players, like does that make you more nervous about the one, or feel more optimistic about one of these different strategies for change, visions of the future?
That's a good question. I mean, I of course think all three of them are just fabulous.
Of course,
right?
Of course.
They're my kids. I'm not clear. I mean, I think that the work that Muse is doing is incredible, and it's global, and there's a lot to it, right? The tax and regulatory challenges at the local level around the world are highly complicated, and those have to be solved. You have to have an operating system to run an accommodations platform. And the way that they've architected their solution to be much more spatial than transactional, I think is working, and it's working really well. I think Canary's innovation is absolutely brilliant, and they're coming at it from a guest experience layer. So it's not a rip and replace, right? It's sort of a new layer, and then they're slowly figuring out how that new layer just begins to talk to the old layer. Then the old layer can stay in place, and then you have this highly intelligent, value chain from pre-arrival all the way through experience and so forth. And that's a whole new operating system for accommodations. And I think, Harman and the team are absolutely killing it. And what works there is that enterprise can engage because they don't have that problem of changing platform. Where for Muse, it's more complicated, right? Muse isn't going to come in and necessarily take over Marriott globally. Right. It's just not going to happen today, right?
So why would you want to?
Say again?
Why would you want to anyway?
Yeah, right. That would be a tough one, that's for sure. But I think that their approaches are very different. And then Hyperguest is a completely different problem, right? That's really living in the retailing and the distribution of content.
So it's a hotel room getting to a travel supplier, not getting lost with rogue rates, or
and it's enabling a supplier to say, okay, what retail shelves around the world do I want my product on? Who am I contracting with? How do I control it? I want transparency. I want control, and sort of eliminates this legacy problem. Both of us have a bet in this category, two different companies, but they're both going to be winners.
We make revenue though. Sorry.
Here we go.
Sorry. No.
Watch out.
No. Ours is called Hotel Trader, but we were talking with Chris. We both make different investments, but would love to have Chris also invest in that too. So
And likewise,
like-
I mean, these are really
it's a big category, though.
big
Huge.
category and a lot of noise, right? There's
Yeah.
so much gray area trading between wholesalers
Yeah.
that just has made a mess of distribution. But that's sort of a different element of the shift in the stack. Yeah.
It's a $60 billion industry, but that needs. It's basically the last leg, if you look at it, that's ripe for digitization. That's why we both probably invested.
It's
in
amazing how it's still a lot of
Yeah.
even facts in a certain sense. How do you measure the success of your investments at HTV besides the financial performance? Is that a question from our audience?
That. Only financial, by the way. So no, I mean the way we look at it is, yes, financial is a big portion. So every investment we make is for the company has to be successful. It's not made for Highgate. We'd love the broader industry for sure to adopt it. Two big metrics that we look at, very, very, very focused, is churn. So in any of these companies, if you have a leaky bucket, you're never going to have a successful company. So how sticky is the customer base? How do they use it? And the second one is the NPS score. The minute the NPS score is high, we know the sell is going to be easy. So, and then it's going to translate. And third, obviously, we love our companies to have a really, really good culture focused on the teams. It's very paramount for us too. We're in it with them for sure.
So the go-to-market sales strategy has to be very strong, and you measure that through churn and the NPS scores.
Yeah, the churn is not just a measure of just go-to-market strategy, but it ties in everything: product, service, operations, go-to-market, everything. It's just the final report card that you get, whether you got an A or an E. So simple as that.
Gotcha. So Chris, can AI help companies drive direct bookings? And if so, is that the end of the OTAs?
I wish. Is that case?
Well, I mean,
the OTAs in the room.
It's interesting to call AI the end of the OTAs when they have 10,000 AI engineers on payroll, and they have for over a decade, right? I mean, so it's a fascinating battle, right? Interestingly enough, at the chain level, they've now negotiated financial arrangements with the OTAs where, in some cases, they're ambivalent, whether something comes direct or through an OTA. So that's an interesting balance. I think the big challenge is that, is the information about the customer, because the OTA wants to own the customer and get that repeat visit where, the brands, of course, want to know who that is, and every hotel does, and so they can service that customer. So I don't think AI necessarily is going to be the key to driving direct. I think there certainly will be AI-driven solutions that will enhance direct, which is going to be, strong product opportunities, again, in the independent and small chain space. But, the biggest battle that will play out, I think, over the next several years and has been playing out over the last several years is between, the origination of travel, which is search, AKA Google, and, their biggest financial customers, which are the OTAs. And as Google continues to drill down and deploy some of their AI tools into the travel ecosystem, I mean, that's interesting. I don't know how that's going to play out. And then will that be direct? Is that direct? If I'm a hotel company and I'm spending a lot of money on Google and getting traffic? I don't know. So anyway, more to come on that.
Audience question following on that: how do you think the potential for Google to further disintermediate the incumbent OTAs? So Google has given free links to a lot of people since the pandemic, a lot of hotel companies, and that's helped them get on a lot of business under their pricing.
Can I add to this?
Please, Kurien.
It's never going to happen.
Okay.
The reason is the lowest rates today are found on OTAs because the industry is addicted. And you have people going and say, run this promotion. They're going to run the promotion. They're getting too many bookings from there. There's no time to look elsewhere. No matter what happens, it's not a technology issue. It's a behavior issue.
Interesting.
If that doesn't change, there's no change in that. So
that does seem to be like the theme. If you don't manage the change management, which Ralph had mentioned at the beginning, seems to be like a key message in the tech adoption. I think we need to, well, unfortunately, we'll have to end it there, but thank you very much, guys.
Hey,
let's keep going.
One takeaway here. I think one thing is we've got to talk about predictive AI and Gen AI. I think the convergence of that over the next year or so is like getting data to be contextual, to talk, that's going to happen. I think that's the biggest thing for our industry. That's what I would say.
Would you agree with that?
I completely agree. Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, thank
Thanks,
you so
Sean.
much for this
Thank
conversation.
you.